Hi, everyone. Today, let's talk about Alibaba splitting up. Then we'll go over Goldman's thoughts on whether banks will tank the economy. Then we'll go over the economic calendar just for a moment. Then we'll go over the charts. Then we'll go over my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So Alibaba announced that they're going to split off into 6 different companies, and as a result of that, the stock was up 14% on the day, one of the best days of trading it's had. This is one of China's largest and most important companies, and they faced a lot of regulatory pressures here recently. They said the company is going to split into 6 units, which is their cloud and intelligence group, global digital commerce, digital media and entertainment, local services for businesses, smart logistics, Toababa, and Tmall, and then its core e-commerce operations. All of these will be basically public companies except for the Toaboa and Tmall. Like I said, the stock was up quite a bit on this announcement. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out. Either way, this is probably a stock in play for trading. It's probably going to continue on this rally, at least in the short term. Moving over to this very reassuring article about the banks not tanking the markets. First sentence is, did someone forget to tell the stock market to crash? I know that's how a lot of people feel right now. We're kind of in this weird middle ground where we're not rallying, but we're not tanking. We're not sure what's going to happen. We're kind of in a purgatory type situation. But it does seem like there's at least a little bit of a shift over into defensives. You mentioned the 20% drop last year and the bounce that we got this year. The question is, what's going to happen next? Are we going to continue to fall this year? We really haven't. We've gone sideways pretty much throughout the year, basically unchanged on the year. And Goldman Sachs is saying we're probably going to stall and not slide. So we're just going to continue to jump around, going up 10%, down 10%, but basically sideways. And they view a recession in the next 12 months as only a 35% chance, well below the consensus of 60%. So Goldman, pretty bullish overall on the markets, but will it hold up? They mentioned the fact that lending has already tightened quite a bit and that this most recent banking crisis, and I was reading earlier that this most recent banking crisis actually acted as a very significant hike in lending standards without the Fed's intervention. I have talked about that on the channel before. That is affecting businesses and the market is still not tanking. They also mentioned that large banks have much higher liquidity standards than small ones and are unlikely to reduce lending further. They also mentioned that the crisis, mostly caused by treasury bonds, has caused investors to start purchasing those treasury bonds, actually reducing the effects on the banks. Also quite interesting. And fourthly, they mentioned that demand for loans was already struggling. The reduced supply of loans and the reduced demand for loans shouldn't have too much of an effect right now either. And to finish up here, they say their best guess is that things will happen that usually happen. Stocks don't usually crash, and banks don't usually collapse. Moving over to the economic calendar, we talked about it yesterday. Wholesale inventories came in as expected. But the big thing here, consumer confidence came in much better than expected, much better than 101, and then even better than the previous read here at 103. So consumers still out there buying, the economy still somewhat strong. And another thing worth noting, we have the 5-year auction note. Previous read was 4.1%, but the actual auction came in today at 3.6, so a little bit lower than last time on the 5-year note. And we'll talk about that a little bit more on the actual yields on the 2 and 10-year notes. Moving over to tomorrow for the economic calendar, you can see not a whole lot on the schedule. Crude oil inventories on there for tomorrow at 10:30 Eastern. That's really the only major one worth watching, but it is worth mentioning because I did take a position in XLE, which will be somewhat affected by this result here at 10:30 Eastern. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&P 500 on the 15-minute and the 2-hour here. You can see we gapped down, tried to fill the gap, just barely did so, and then sold off pretty strongly. Made a lower low at 393.78 and then rallied really aggressively into the close. Got above all these EMAs and VWAP, looking very powerful. Looking at the 2-hour, you can see we're in this wedge, testing resistance. We tested resistance yesterday, sold off into today, and then closed basically unchanged, looking pretty strong going into tomorrow's session. looking to test 397.48 or 399.25 to the upside. That would be interesting. But if we do break down, we'll come down to probably 393.33 or 392.48. Looking at the indicators, both MACDs are bullish, both RSIs pretty bullish. 2-hour RSI just below the SMA. You'd like to see that breakout if we are going to go much higher. And if we can get above that resistance, we have quite a bit of upside up to around 404.41. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, you can see similar thesis, gap down, slight rally, big sell-off, retested this 305.55 level, which was the low going back to Wednesday of last week. Took that level out just a little bit before recovering both times, overthrew that level, rallied up, testing this lower trend line. Just like the SPY, the rally into the close was super aggressive, retesting the 55 EMA here on the 15-minute chart. It's also the 9 EMA here on the 2-hour chart. Momentum, it's RSI on the 15-minute, very bullish. 2-hour still looking like a potential step down, but in my opinion, I think we're going to get back up to around 308.86, 309 tomorrow. If we do get past that level, still looking at 310.80 to the upside and 314 to the downside. If we get below 305.50, then looking at 303.64 and then 300.41. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow on the hourly chart, basically these are unchanged, still chopping within this range on the Russell, looking to break out above 174.38. Similarly on the Dow, looking to get above this area of highest volume at 324.38, back up to 325.72. The Russell breaks out, looking at 177.33 or the 200 SMA at 176.72. To the downside, the Russell's still looking at 170.35 and then the Dow 322.30 or 319.54. MACD stepping in the bullish direction. RSIs both look a little bit bearish going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to Apple and Tesla on the hourly chart, similar thesis to the NASDAQ, gap down, fell down, rallied into the close on both charts. Tesla looking a little bit weaker here, came down and tested that 185.50 level, breakdown from there, 182.09. You can hold above this 188 level, we're looking back to 193.50. So these levels are definitely in play and it's worth watching going into tomorrow's session. MACDs both look a little bit bullish, RSIs both look a little bit bullish. Moving over to consumer staples and consumer discretionary here. Once again, outperformance from staples, but we made a bit of a high, but we definitely got rejection here, waiting to see if we're going to find support down at this area of highest volume, 73.49. If we do break through that level and fill the gap, then we're looking back down at 72.98. That would be interesting. And then if we get through there, then looking at the 200 SMA at 72.44. Discretionary has established a little bit of a higher low here from this previous low. If this continues to rally, that's interesting. Looking for a breakout above 142.65. And then if we can get above there, then we're looking back up to 145.48 or this zone of resistance at 146.73. So still watch these lows, looking to see if we break today's lows and then come back down to 138.40. That would be interesting. But right now, discretionary looks a little bit strong. Staples looks a little bit weaker going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to energy and utilities, I just wanted to highlight the run that energy's had. I'm not sure why I wasn't paying attention to this, but you can see it was a pretty strong 3-day push, and it's still intact here, looking to retest the 200 SMA up at 81.35. Certainly looks strong going into tomorrow's session. We took out this previous high, came back, retested it, closed bullish into the end of the session. Zooming out here, you can see there's lots of room for upside. Certainly some levels up here that are worth watching, but the low of the previous consolidation is all the way up at 83.50. So if we can get above where we're at pretty much right now, and we can get through this kind of a consolidation, but looking at A350 at that previous level of highest volume and consolidation, looks strong going into that level. Similarly, utilities look strong in the midday, but sold off pretty strongly from that 66.54 level. I was really eyeing 67 in this consolidation, but we sold back down and we're kind of flat here now on the day. Similar to what we saw on staples, this just looks a little bit weak going into tomorrow's session, and it's definitely something to watch if we break down below 65.75. Moving over to yields here on the 2-year and the 10-year, you can see we got another bullish day. We talked about that happening yesterday. We're now at this area of previous resistance on the 2-year. If we can get through that level, there's definitely some upside up to 4.2, 4.265. That would be interesting. MACD bullish, RSI bullish. Looks like we're going to go higher here tomorrow. So keep an eye on that going into tomorrow's session. 10-year, however, was much stronger. We held support multiple times. We're at resistance right now at that 3.57 level. We have a trend line just above that at 3.625, and then the major resistance at 3.75. Again, MACD bullish, RSI bullish. You would assume that we're going to get a little bit more of an upswing here on the 10-year, which is interesting considering how strong we saw technology going into the end of the session. Looking at the dollar here for just a moment, we continue to downtrend, waiting to see if this is going to be a higher low or a lower low. Right now, still looks like higher low could happen. Momentum is pretty weak. You can see we stepped down here for 2 days in a row and then got a slight up step. Usually that doesn't mean we're going to get a huge continuation. It'll be pretty minimal, and then we'll get the flip. Certainly could be a double bottom as well. That would be interesting. But in my opinion, this is reacting to some of the liquidity that the Fed is pumping into the markets, which is generally weakening the dollar in my opinion. Looking at J&K here on the hourly and the 12-hour, we did gap down, but we did fill the gap, and we pretty much closed unchanged here. You can see the 12-hour candle looks quite bullish. Big rejection wick to the downside, still holding within this area. Certainly looks like we could go a little bit higher tomorrow, but otherwise not much to say here. Still stable within this zone. Moving over to the VIX here on the 4-hour and the 12-hour, you can see we were holding really strongly pretty much throughout the session right up until the end of the day, right at that 2032 level. And now we're testing the very low of this wick on the candle from Wednesday. If that breaks down here tomorrow, then we should see markets go a little bit higher. And it does look like it's going to happen. Both MACDs bearish, both RSIs bearish. Looking to see if we retest this 1850 level. That would be interesting, giving markets a little bit more upside here. And it certainly looks like that's going to be the case going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to my accounts here, you can see I managed to make a few bucks. I played pretty defensively throughout the day, made no changes on my IWM position. I did try to buy some utilities in the midday, but like I said, that looks a little bit weaker here, so I swapped that over to an XLE covered call here on my IRA. Otherwise, still trading IWM and now XLE in my IRA. Got 83 cents here for an expiration on Friday. Obviously, I still will manage this in a small profit here. I do think XLE is going to go up into the end of the week. Looks bullish. Otherwise, looking at my positions for today, I ended up getting 2 303 puts and 3 305 puts here in the midday, which all ended up worthless based on that really strong rally into the close, which pretty much propped up my accounts into a profit here. You can see I also have a 304, which is already in a $40 profit. Probably should have taken that off and then reassessed tomorrow. But I do have a 305 here for 61 cents as well. So 2 puts going into tomorrow's session, and then we'll see what happens. In terms of what I think is going to happen, seems like we're going to get a pretty bullish push based on the strong rally that we had into the close. Let me know down in the comment section if you think Alibaba is a buy now that they're splitting up, or if the banks are going to tank the markets. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.